Hi everyone, and welcome back to Safehouse Chats. This is our third episode.
Yeah.
Today we'll be covering Sly 2 Band of Thieves.
My favorite game.
I'm your co-host Aris. It is your favorite game.
My name is Snap, and this is my favorite game.
It is.
If I had to give the gold medal to something, it would be this.
So it's like your favorite game of all time.
Of all of the things that I have liked as stories, it still retains the top spot for me.
Yeah, and that's completely valid and understandable.
From your very unbiased perspective as someone who also really likes this game.
What do you mean? Of course I'm giving you my unbiased opinion when I'm the co-host of the Sly Cooper podcast.
Yeah.
This is gonna sound like a joke, but I've never actually considered what my favorite video game is. I have a few, and this is definitely up there. So,
oh yeah,
100%. It's the crown jewel of the series. Undoubtedly the best game in the trilogy.
I think there's a perfectly natural... I've said more than once at this stage about, it's difficult to make a game. You are pulling together stuff from scratch. You have so many balls in the air. A sequel is an opportunity to iron all that out and have something more solid. By the same token, a trilogy ending like threequel is an opportunity to kind of... And... I'm not saying Sly 3 is bad. I think it's almost wafer thin between what is better, Sly 2 or Sly 3. I think it's very close, personally. But it is difficult to end a trilogy. There's a need for escalation that kind of pushes you toward making things bigger in ways that often work and often don't work. So that ends up... I think here is a very kind of classic Star Wars-esque peak shape. That the first one is a bit rough. The third one is a bit, over the top. This is the one where, everything just clicks together very nicely.
Yes.
Aris is giving me a funny look, so I will clarify that when I say Star Wars, I mean the first three movies, and not, in general, because now that is way too much stuff.
Thank you for clarifying and reading my mind. Before we get into it, a little, not disclaimer, but as a little intro, we will be covering... the second game as we covered the first one in our last episode, but because this is so huge, today we'll be covering from the prologue all the way to A Predator Awakes.
Yes. So Cairo, Paris, India, and then Prague, Canada, and the finale. I think maybe a good way we'll put it is episode 3A, episode 3B, because they definitely are going to be linked. But we figured we both had a lot to say, so we didn't want this to be a 4-hour-long thing.
Exactly. It's not cut and dried like the first game.
Yeah.
A lot happens.
Even just from a gameplay perspective, there's a lot more to get into, but mostly the leap that has taken place between the first and second game is going to be based on the narrative and the characters. So there's a lot to unpack there in particular.
And just because this is probably going to be a huge episode based on what we have to cover, we'll just attach timestamps for each level in the description just to make it easier and more of a pleasurable listening experience for you.
We will figure out the YouTube chapter thing for you.
Yeah. So just getting into the game first, the game overall. Sly Band of Thieves, released in 2004. Reinvented Sly. Completely a rehaul.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair to say. It's obviously recognizable between the first and the second, but they feel almost like different generations. Like, Sly 1 was almost a PS1 game, and this is definitively a PS2 game. This is what the PlayStation 2 can do.
Exactly, and I feel like this transition was like necessary. It was necessary for them to tell more serious and more sophisticated like stories, and I could see the series moving forward in the same direction as Sly 1, but it wouldn't have the same gravitas as the Sly 2 and 3.
I'll say right now, if they had made 3 Sly 1s, that would be a happy memory from my childhood. I would not be making a podcast about it 20 years later. I would not have gotten, like, caught on it the way that I evidently have. This is, I think, the biggest, like, thing I can say in praise of this game. Probably what makes this game stand out to me so much is that this was the first video game I ever played that made me realize games can have a story that is good. Like, after, literally I had a nice Game Boy port of the first Super Mario where you jump and you move to the right and that's it. I played that caliber of game quite happily. And then I played this and my tiny mind was blown.
Yeah.
Given the overall nature of video game story writing, it's entirely possible to have a good narrative, but it is not at all common. This is still a metric that I use when I am playing modern games, where I have a yardstick from my childhood that holds up, I think, fairly well. So we're certainly going to get into why I think that is the case. And as well, it's legitimately just a well-made video game. Like, it is fun to play. I have been playing through it for the podcast, and it is still good.
Yeah, it holds up so well. And also what you described is such a shared sentiment and experience, because I was like 4 when it came out, and I remember like playing it or like watching my dad play it. I was like just then getting into video games because I was literally like 4 years old. So I was like, oh, video games like tell such interesting stories. Like, if video games I'm gonna like pick up when I'm older are like this, I'm gonna be into that. And it kind of set a precedent that, as you said, like this is not common. It set such a high standard. Like, it's crazy how good the story is.
I think what we keep coming back to is like simple but well told.
Yeah.
Like, it is, they know what they're doing. They know the tropes. They know the archetypes. They're playing in that kind of genre space very effectively.
But I wouldn't say it's like completely simple either. Like, I feel like some of the ways they choose to handle the narrative is not that often seen.
Yeah.
Side note, another thing I wanted to say, like, for the game, and I'm pretty sure I posted this on Tumblr as well, like, years ago, but I always found it bizarre to call this one Band of Thieves and the third one Honor Among Thieves.
I remember this.
This one, like, very much focuses on, like, morality and, like, honor, like, the two type of thieves.
And someone with a certain lack of it.
Yes, like, the Contessa, like, the Claw Gang basically is like the honorless thieves.
Yeah.
And then you have the third one, which is like assembling a band of thieves, and it's like
it's backwards. That might be one of your posts of all time for sure, because you did make that post. You did make that post years ago, and every time my mind wanders to I still have the original PlayStation 2 copies on my shelf under my television. And every time my eye wanders there and I see the subtitles, I remember that post you made. And I was like, yeah, they are kind of backwards, huh? I think what it comes down to is, may as well bring this up now, it's a very fundamental thing. Technically, Murray, Bentley, and even Carmelita are playable in Sly 1.
Yeah.
You play as Murray via the van. You play as Bentley via the hacking. And one of the multiple turret sections, you're actually playing as Carmelita. But by and large, it is Sly's game. It is Sly's circus. Sly is the one you are playing as. It's a very nice cover image, the European box art. They set out immediately, you are playing as Sly, as Bentley, and as Murray. Like, we are giving you 3 guys to play as. They differ from each other in how they even, like, move around and how they feel to play as. This is the kind of gameplay conceit that you are not just Sly anymore. You are the entire team. Then from there, they were like, oh, we have to name the third game something.
We used the good title.
Yeah.
We used it. Correction, you play as Sly, you play as Bentley, but also you play as Murray 2.0.
The fixed Murray. What if Murray was better?
The fixed Murray. Circle back, and if you haven't already listened to the second episode, and we get into the Murray Avril Lavigne phenomenon there.
I feel like we should maybe define that real quick, because you brought it up and you were like, do you know what I mean? And I said, yeah, I do know what you mean. And I think that's a cardinal sin of podcasting that we did not explain to people at home who might not know what you mean. Very briefly, there is a conspiracy theory that pop singer Avril Lavigne died, I guess. I'm only passingly familiar with it. But the Avril Lavigne of a certain era is gone, and the Avril Lavigne we have now is a separate, different woman pretending to be the first Avril Lavigne, which is the kind of thing people on the internet just, like, need to produce and believe in, I suppose.
I love how this exact conversation was one had on Geordie Shore between 2 of the castmates, and she's like, do you know what happened to Avril Lavigne? And then she proceeds to explain it, and then the other one in the confessional is like, Avril Lavigne? Who the fuck is she? So
yeah, I only know her
is
from the Skater Boy song.
And that Murray followed the same fate.
Should we maybe talk about Sly 2 now?
Okay. Yeah. Do we want to get into the prologue, or do you have anything else to say about the game? I have a question before we get into it.
Oh, what's your question?
I will also ask whoever is tuning in.
Yes, the comments.
Yes, let us know through the comments. My question to you is, when do you collect the clue bottles during the episode? Do you collect them before doing anything else? Do you collect them while doing the missions? Or do you leave it as a treat at the end?
Ooh. I set out to play Sly 2 to refresh myself for the podcast. And I was kind of tired the first night I was sitting down to do it. And I ended up not doing any of the missions in Paris. Just vibing around, getting the clues, and collecting the treasures as well. And I think that's generally indicative. I think it would be a good way of getting to know the level or getting reacquainted with the level. Oftentimes, the missions will kind of bring you around anyway. So, like, it's perfectly natural to collect them over the course of just filling out the level as normal. Personally, I tend to do it earlier. I will probably do, like, the first recon mission, and then I'll get all the clues. I was just reflecting, like, earlier today. In the first game, the clues are much more just kind of like a collectible thing. Like, they're there so that you can grab them, and that's sort of it. I am impressed by how they haven't changed fundamentally. If anything, there's less of them. But just by having them in the hub, it becomes a lot more synergistic, that they're scattered around. They're kind of like naturally encouraging you to explore and to move around the environment. Tags in nicely with the guard patterns as well, because maybe you'll see a clue, and then you go over, and then you'll see that a guard has something that you can steal from his pocket. So you follow him, and then in the course of that, you see another clue. Like that kind of natural rhythm tends to arise. My answer is relatively early on in a new level, I will just kind of soak in the environment and get the clues while I'm doing that.
Respectable. Thank you for the very mathematical answer. What really stood out to me from what you just said is that it encourages like the exploration, like the natural exploration of the hub. I'm kind of thinking how in Sly 3, when they remove the bottles, before the level starts, it always has that like little cutscene when a level starts of Sly going to the safe house.
Which they do passingly here, but they don't kind of commit to it the same way Sly 3 always does it.
And I'm thinking, is it because they removed the bottles so they want to like showcase the entire hub?
That could be it.
That's interesting.
I wonder why they removed the bottles now that you mention it. It could be that, like, personally, I think collecting all of them is kind of its own reward, but there is supposed to be a reward at the end, and some of the gadgets, I think it was difficult for them to come up with, like, 30 distinct gadgets for Sly, because it ends up going into places like, oh, you can throw things farther. That's cool, right?
When the rewards are shit.
They felt under pressure, perhaps, to come up with gadgets. But it is a definite... It's one of the negatives of Sly 3, is that where did the clue bottles go?
Exactly. I wish they had kept them. But, yeah. And I agree with you, by the way, about the collecting them early. I set out to do it before the missions.
Okay, before even the first mission.
Before even the first mission. I want that shit going. Like, I don't want to be doing submission and then, like, all of a sudden hearing the little tick, tick, tick. Like,
yeah. One thing I'll also praise, tiny detail, but very appreciated, they go at different rates. So if you're standing in the vicinity of two different clue bottles, you will hear two different clinks that don't sync up. So that tells you that there isn't just the one. That clearly a lot of thought went into that, and rightly so.
You can't actually see me, but my mouth is wide open because I've just, like, the realization is coming through now. Like,
yeah.
Oh my God, they did.
Yeah.
Like, we've come a long way from them stuffing them into those little, like, vaults.
Safes.
And you had, like, 5 of them together.
Yeah. This is exactly why this game has stuck with me. There is evidently, like, a lot of craft went into even the small details.
Should we get into A Shadow from the Past?
We open in Cairo, the Natural History Museum, which I already said that the Paris opening from Sly 1 was good. As with a lot of things, they took a good idea from the first game and they improved it even further.
Yeah.
The opening shot of the pyramids, which have nothing to do with the story, but like it's just such a nice visual to open on.
I kind of disagree.
Okay.
They don't have anything to do with the story directly, but if you look into it, it's like supposedly where Clockwork was born and now he's been put apart in the same location.
That's true.
I think that's ingenious. It's like full circle moment.
A common headcanon is to have Clockwork be ancient Egyptian because Sly's lineage started in Egypt.
Question mark.
And as has been pointed out, ancient Egypt's pretty fucked up. A shockingly broad variety of stories have their horrible dark magic be like, it is an ancient Egyptian artifact. So if you told me Clockwork was from ancient Egypt, I'm like, sure, yeah, all right. I don't know what else they have there, but yeah.
Sure beats prehistoric Australia, but we're not getting into that.
I considered saying it, and I decided against it, which is my character arc for like 2019 onwards. I'm just like, I'm thinking about it, but I'm not saying it out loud.
Guys, it's so underrated. Anyway, so...
Yes. So, shot of the pyramids, then you see again, the three gang members in silhouette running across the roof. Like, even just in terms of how they're animated, you can tell the differences between them. Sly slides down in on a rope, very kind of classic heist movie action, and then you're into the main menu. When you hit start, you're in that room, which is like, again, like a little touch, but it kind of brings you in immediately. And it's a nice, when you boot up the game again, like I've never minded having to sit through that for the 10 seconds it takes. Is there anything you have about this like first, very, very, very like literally first room? Because I have at least one comment. We're going to go room by room for the entire game.
We set out to structure this episode chronologically, but I think you took it to the way too literal sense. What I will say, I love how right off the bat, you know, it's like a different game, and it is going to be a different game. Like, we're not in some like Bugs Bunny, like Looney Tunes, like setting with breakdancing, like walruses or anything. Like, we're pulling off a heist at the Cairo Museum, looking for clockwork parts. The dialogue feels so fresh.
Yeah.
It's like if Sly got a facelift. Like, not to shade Sly 1, but this is very much like the facelift, like the BBL. Sly and Bentley are like giving like each other like nicknames, like it's charming, you're in the action, you can like jump around and like feel as free as ever, like there's no constraints.
Yeah, I do appreciate, it's old hat to me now because I've played through this game, so I know the opening cutscene like the back of my hand. It is, what struck me this time playing through it was Sly is ribbing Bentley, and as soon as Bentley is like, you're not taking this seriously, Sly immediately is like, yeah, I'm not. Like, his tone changes immediately. Both the dialogue and the voice acting have kind of leveled up from the last one. Both of them feel a lot more natural. It's a minor detail, and it's easy to miss because you are spawned right next to a bounce pad that takes you, like, that's the correct path. But this first room you're put in has just a whole bunch of weird platforms for you to, like, if you were really getting used to this game, you can take your time just moving Sly around, kind of interacting with these different, like, physics objects. Like, there's the globe that's constantly spinning. There's, like, a set of weights that acts like a seesaw. Just, like, real kind of basic physics. But it's an opportunity for, like, an inexperienced player to get to grips with the movement system. Or if you've played this game before, you can just jump once and then you walk across a whale skeleton and then you are progressing. I'm just going to be repeating this for the next hour, I know, but that was another moment of really good design.
It was, and it matches one of the other notes I have down, which is like the pacing for this tutorial is so good.
Yeah.
Like, it's very well executed, like not only full of exposition, but they hit every story beat in time to let it sink in, and I feel like controlling the new Sly and playing like with all these new controls and the new physics and stuff is they give you space and time to let it sink in again.
That's it.
Which is great.
And they do that like long term in terms of like the second thing that happens is that you see Bentley hacking, and you can see how he's disabling like the searchlights and the doors and stuff. You don't hack yourself. Like, we're going to be talking about hacking in the next episode. That's how long it takes for you, the player, to hack anything. But in minute 2, you have been introduced to Bentley as the hacker. Bentley is able to achieve things by hitting the same 3 buttons on a keyboard over and over in a looped animation. Likewise, Murray is not playable, but his whole deal is laid out very quickly. I definitely wanted to say, I gushed about Carmelita's entrance into the last game. That was my favorite character introduction. Murray's is my favorite this time. Again, I have to stress, this was my first Sly game. I was not familiar with old Murray. This was the first time I ever saw Murray, and I'm just on board. He crashes through the roof, and then he starts delivering just this, like, mangled comic book dialogue that, like, even as a kid, you know that the words he's saying aren't real words, and it's great. You are making such a face at me.
I love how, like, we're consistent in never being on the same page.
Apparently not.
Like, with the last episode. Because this is, like, in one of, like, I split my notes into best and worst, and this is, like, the first, like, actual worst point. Not worst, but, like...
Not your favorite.
Now that we've explained it, like, the Avril Lavigne of it all. Like, Murray just casually drops in with his, like, new face-skinny balaclava moment, and no questions asked. Like, nothing is mentioned. Lifts an entire gate.
Yeah.
An entire gate, mind you, open, and throws a huge statue from one balcony to the other over an entire museum courtyard.
Yeah.
After a whole ass game of having us protect him with a blaster. Choices.
See...
Okay.
Yeah, this is the disconnect, I feel, because you played Sly 1 first, and I played Sly 2 first. So
I did.
When I show up to the party, the hippo crashes through the roof and is like, "Hi, it's me, Murray." I'm like, "Cool, that's Murray." And then I go back and I play the first game, and I'm like, "Oh, what happened to Murray? Why is Murray weird?" Whereas longer term, like, people who entered in at the quote-unquote correct point would have the opposite reaction.
Mary went through puberty, and yeah, that's
basically.
Like, honestly, this is not to say I prefer the old Murray.
Just that it's very sudden.
Yes, it is very sudden. No questions asked, no context provided.
Yeah.
And I am surprised, moving a bit on here, how this beats Carmelita and Neyla's entrance, because that is...
Oh, that's a close second.
That is something else entirely.
I have said this before, but just as a reminder to our listeners at home, the heist appears to go well. Sly enters the room that is supposed to have the clockwork parts. The room is empty, except for 2 sarcophagi. The sarcophagi open, and Carmelita and some purple cat come out of the sarcophagi, and Carmelita's like, "Haha, I got you." The question here is, was that Carmelita's idea for a stakeout? How long were they in the sarcophagi? Did she have to sell Neyla on also getting into the sarcophagus? Like, did she explain her plan and Neyla was like, "That's stupid," and Carmelita was like, "Well, I'm the senior officer and I'm giving you a direct order to get in the sarcophagus with me, and we're gonna wait as long as it takes." Like, it's just it's a great, like, dynamic visual, obviously, but then if you unpack it, there's a lot of questions.
What if one of them had asthma?
Yeah. Or, like...
What would happen then?
I have to hope that that's, like, a replica and not literally a millennia-old priceless artifact that they're just breathing on the inside of.
This has, like, Sly 2 Carmelita written all over it. Like, just flop after flop of ideas. Like, I'm gonna trap Murray and feed him jelly beans until I catch the other 2. I'm like... Sweetie,
she's got...
How did you get this job to begin with?
She has very rigid thinking. She's not...
Yes.
Adaptability is not her strong suit.
It really ain't.
There are similar moments we're gonna get to, all right. I also want to just point out in that first scene, because Sly himself points it out in the very nice cutscene afterwards, once you've done the gameplay part, Neyla enunciates Claw Gang. Like, notably, as though assuming Sly is an idiot, which is not without basis.
Yeah.
Like, she's...
Yeah.
The method of entry and the guard casualties all point to this being a Claw Gang job. 5 minutes later, Sly is doing the thinking emoji.
Sly, did you catch that, sweetheart? Do you want me to repeat? The tomfoolery aside, though, and I know I gave Carmelita a lot of crap in our last episode. I did. I own up to it. But, like, here, I do want to make a note on visuals later on. Or, like, actually, I'll just do it now. Like, I love the visuals here.
Yeah.
I truly think that this is one of the most well-presented levels, even though it's not like a level proper, because there's just so much going on, but at the same time, it all falls under, like, the same umbrella. Like, I love how they lean into this theme of shadows to match the title, A Shadow from the Past. I love how Carmelita and Neyla come out of sarcophagi that have Anubis on them, like,
Yeah.
the connection to death. Love the Easter eggs with the concept art in the portraits.
Yeah.
Of, like, the villains from Sly 1.
The Fiendish Five,
Like,
and you can see, like,
yes.
weird proto versions of Sly.
Oh, when he looked like a rat.
As a kid, playing it for the first time, I was like, what? What? That's weird.
You know, the one where he's, like, going towards, like, Miss Ruby's, like, house, and he looks like a rat.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And then it all climaxes with the fact that Neyla evidently does not bother to chase them is in itself both foreshadowing and kind of funny. But I'd prefer that she isn't there, because what you get is this corridor scene that has the four main characters of the entire series, Sly, Bentley Murray, and Carmelita, all in one place, all doing like a dynamic sequence together. You've chased down the corridor for a little while. Bentley and Murray break off. Then you have, again, it's a kind of immediate comparison, because we had moments like this in the first game of Sly on one rooftop, Carmelita on the other. He's running, she's shooting. You can see immediately all she did in Sly 1 animation-wise was she jumped from point to point, she fired, and she shook her fist. Now she's running back and forth, she's like strafing. She has this kind of urgent energy to her that looks much more lively. It's just such a nice kind of, this whole tutorial encapsulates the series in one go, in like one 10-minute playable section.
They truly, like, upgraded her, and for me, that mostly comes through during her interactions with Neyla, and that is something I wish we could have seen more of, because apart from, like, future cutscenes, this is the only time we see them working as partners during the game.
Yeah.
Like, in the field. Because the other one is, like, during the ball, but, like, they're undercover. So this is, like, the actual only time we see them working together. And the dynamic here is, like, nothing short of amazing. Like, Carmelita is, like, as arrogant as ever. Like, she gets snappy when Neyla oversteps her boundaries. And I'm like...
I have to assume that all of the time they're spending together that we don't see, Neyla is driving Carmelita fucking insane.
100%.
Carmelita is not like a peppy person. Carmelita is not all smiles. But the hostility she shows to what is nominally like an up-and-coming junior officer is so naked and so undisguised that I feel like character-wise, what has to be happening is that she's just getting worn down the longer she spends with Neyla. And then the little glimpses we see of them, Neela's on her last nerve. Like, she can't believe that she is still dealing with Neyla. But don't worry, you won't be for long.
Wait 2 more episodes. Let's see how much she angers you then. Like, I truly wish we could have seen more of that dynamic. I do.
The last thing I want to bring up about the tutorial is we go straight into this great cutscene, which again, like, Sly explains his backstory at the start of every game. This was my introduction to his whole deal. I think it works very well. I think it catches you up on the events of the game, the first game, without necessarily, like, spoiling everything. And it sells you on clockwork. obviously the best experience is to play the first game and to have that build up and to see Clockwork and to fight him over a volcano. Like, that's the only true way to really understand what Clockwork's all about. But I think they did as good a job as they could pull off in just having Kevin Miller tell you how bad Clockwork is. Because I'm being facetious. He narrates it, but they have the music, they have the visuals, they manage to summon a sense of weight. Clockwork is uniquely terrible. We need to destroy his corpse. Because that's the plot of the game. 3 lovable thieves try to destroy the corpse of a guy they already killed, just to make sure he's definitely dead. Rated E for everyone.
You bring up actually a good point, and since we're on the subject, something that we haven't even... It's not even just about how talented and spot on Miller's voice performance is.
And it is.
Like, it is 100%, but it's also when you've played it so many times over like the entire course of your life, there's some stuff that are like so well delivered by him that they actually like stick with you. And especially now, I bring this up because what you've just discussed, like sometimes I'll just be like brushing my teeth or like taking a shower and like out of nowhere I'll just think, 2 years ago, I thought I'd finished it.
How naive I was to think.
We know the lines, honey. We know the lines, Kevin.
Yeah.
Like,
every so often I look at a guy and I think, is it inappropriate to call him a monster? No, not at all.
And to give everyone their flowers, like it's also sometimes she's no healthcare professional.
Yes, I got to that just like yesterday, and that's such a good line read from Matt Olson. There's so many great lines in this series and this game.
Exactly, like by everyone as well. Like,
yeah.
Literally everyone has like at least one iconic line.
Yeah.
Even the more niche characters. Like sometimes like You Harpy Witch will come up. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I wanted to give Kevin Miller like his flowers.
Absolutely.
And with that, are you ready to go on to Black Chateau?
Yes.
The Black Chateau, which most of my notes are in the complaint section.
Oh no.
Surprisingly. But I just want to ask, what exactly is the Black Chateau?
Oh God. I don't think it's the nightclub. Because the nightclub has a different name. And it's not dark at all. Because it's got the gaudy yellow and green and red sign. Maybe... I was so tempted to say the Black Chateau is the friends we made along the way.
Watch yourself, okay? Because the thing is that I'm kind of thinking like in the cutscene, like with the title, it shows the Safehouse.
Yeah, they are thieves. Like, what I came up with was that the Black Chateau sort of refers to this area of Paris.
Okay.
Because it's not the entire city of Paris. It's just like the blocks around the nightclub. Dimitri evidently has guards patrolling like the streets. It's his area, even if it's not literally his house and his nightclub. I think maybe they just wanted to work in the word chateau to their title because they thought the vibes were right. And to be clear, the vibes are right.
They are.
I have never thought that this episode shouldn't be called The Black Chateau, but taking it literally, I don't know what it's talking about.
Well, I'm hoping this question has changed your opinion because I don't know what the Black Chateau is.
It certainly made me question it, yeah.
I don't know either. And it's like been bugging me for a really long time. Just like with the title, like the two game title mix up, just the same with this.
Yeah.
It's a weird choice, but with that out of the way, I don't want to like dive into the complaints straight away.
I can take the lead there. I have a lot of love for this level because this was my favorite game, and it's the first level of my favorite game. And as I've said, I didn't necessarily play it all the way through when I was a kid. So I think this is the single video game level that I have spent the most time in, which is kind of interesting to me as an adult because it's not that big of a space. The Sly 2 levels in general feel smaller now that I have played games that are bigger in scope. And just kind of like the natural thing of like everything feels bigger when you're a kid. And I think they were deliberate in they made this first level a bit smaller than the other ones so that it wouldn't be too overwhelming out the gate. The Canada levels kind of stretch on a bit more, whereas this is more self-contained. And yet, I have a lot of happy memories of just kind of aimlessly wandering it around. Like, the colors are great, the music is iconic, it is one of the best tracks Peter McConnell has ever done. We are still in the tutorial zone. Like, the tutorial has not ended. But, as you said, things are paced well. It starts... the fundamentals are, like, there of the recon mission, the, like, pickpocketing mission, the stealth mission. Here's your first Murray mission. Here's your first Bentley mission. This is what a treasure is. Like, by the end of the level, you have all of the tools you'll need going forward. That when, like, you come up against something that isn't in this level, like the ORC stuff or the hacking, you have the fundamentals completely down. Yes?
I disagree.
That's fine. It's a discussion podcast.
I'm gonna go on a bit of a rant here.
All right, hit me.
My main issue is that the Black Chateau is it's basically like a bit like half-baked. Like, due to it being like a very lengthy tutorial, it feels like wasted potential for me.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, like I do share the nostalgia. The vibe is 10 out of 10, like the Paris, the music, the nightclub, the sneaking around. It's like if you could choose one episode to represent what Sly is, I would have gone with the Black Chateau.
Sure.
Because it's not some exotic location, it's Paris. Paris is very much like synonymous with Sly. Like, this is like a classic Sly caper. But it feels like wasted potential because the second part never came to fruition. It feels like a bit of a slog to get through during replays.
Yeah.
Like, if A Shadow from the Past / the prologue included Bentley and Murray sections, I think we could have had more interesting missions here rather than, like, track down 3 machines and throw shit on them until they break. Like, okay, I get it. Like, for first-time players, it's Murray and Bentley in the hub. Understandable. But... And I know we'll be covering cut content in a different episode, but when you play this episode with the cut Monaco level in mind, it's clear there's stuff that was originally meant to be explored further.
Right.
Like how Dimitri's office connects the disco ball room to the room being cleaned by janitor rats. That's never explored. How if you do some exploring on your way to the recon segment, you discovered an entire unused upstairs floor?
I figured that was just in there for fun. Like, I don't know how many playthroughs...
But it's so hard to reach, though.
Yeah, but you can reach it. And like my, 8th playthrough or something, I finally realized you could go up there, and that felt like such a...
Yeah.
A moment of like, oh wow, this is like a world that you can explore. But it probably, taking a more cynical view, yeah, maybe there was supposed to be something up there that is not up there.
Exactly.
Because it just hits a wall at a certain point and you're like, well, that was cool, I didn't think I could be up here. And then you turn around and you go back to what you were doing.
Exactly. And when you play the entire level with considering that the Monaco level was cut, you start noticing these like little details, and it all becomes super like crystal clear during the boss fight. I think it's the biggest offense of cut content, because it starts off with some phenomenal dialogue.
That's true.
Okay, we have Raccoonus Doodoo's. What is it like with clocks, bro?
Cracker box.
Your suit sucks. Like Cracker box, yes. It's iconic. But then after that, Dimitri's blasting ring is never explained.
Yeah.
Ever.
There's a lot of that going around of just inexplicable superpowers. I kind of accept it as par for the course. But yeah, it's not a thing lizards can normally do.
Or like the you can only stay in only the ground floor, and even with exploring you can go up and explore like the second and third floors. That's also it's unexplained. And then he goes to like the printing machine's controls like mid-fight. Like, why exactly?
Yeah.
But even if we don't talk about the cut content, it does feel like this episode is a bit detached from the rest. You know, Sly 2 doesn't hold the player's hand when it comes to the plot, okay? The cutscenes cover the basics in their own pace, but if you're really like inquisitive, you can gather the clues earlier. Like with the conversation between Jean Bisson and Arpeggio.
That's right.
Like if you stick around, you basically know what's going to happen. That being said, I think we could have had like a bit more of like slight indication of Dimitri's role in Arpeggio's plan, because when it's mentioned that spice is being distributed through the nightclub's food, it's like we never saw that coming. And they could have like added like a spice room in one of like the basement segments, or you know, just like even like slight hint. And what I'm driving at is that this episode's like it feels like it could be in another game.
Right.
Not in another game, but it doesn't gel with the rest the same way that the rest like are connected. Like Dimitri isn't seen with the other villains at the ball. This episode isn't a two-parter. The overarching narrative really takes off in a Starry-Eyed Encounter. So in the grander scheme of things, like it's a bit of an individual adventure.
Yeah.
You know?
And if they had paced the tutorial faster, we would have kind of gotten into that stuff sooner.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
But it sounds like I hate this episode, and I don't. I don't. Yeah, those are my main complaints. Like, I just wanted to get them out of the way because I do truly think there's like some great bits overall.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's my main issue with it. But rant over.
That all makes sense. Yeah. I have a question for you that I may as well just break out now. Do you have any weird little traditions, like things that you do every time that you play Sly 2? Because I have at least 3 that I can name. I always do missions in a certain order, say.
Yeah.
Like in this level, I would do, like the last batch of them, I would do the pickpocketing level, because that's like, it's fine. And then I would do the Neyla level, and then the Neyla level naturally leads into the Bentley level. During the heist, I always intentionally mess up shooting the hook at the sign, because Murray has like a bank of 10 different, oh, I missed, dialogues that he cycles through. And one of them, he says, oh, cupcakes. I thought that was unspeakably funny.
What?
I thought that was the funniest shit I ever heard when I was a kid. The faces you're making.
Cupcakes?
Oh, cupcakes. Because he can't say fuck, obviously.
I am in shock horror because this is the first time hearing of this, okay?
You're too good at it. You're too good at the game.
Cupcakes?
Oh, cupcakes.
No, trust and believe that like little hook segment is always like pushing my buttons wrong. Okay.
The shots of Sly, like, reaching out his arm completely in vain on a hook that's a million miles away from his hand. So depressing.
The traditions thing, though, is very cute.
Thank you.
It is something I do as well. Like, I feel a bit exposed.
Oh.
If I'm being honest. I always leave the best mission for, like, last.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the kind of guy that, like, leaves, like, the best part of, like, the meal last.
Me too.
On my plate.
Me too.
So I try to get, like, the Bentley shit done and then play the rest. I'm surprised you said the pickpocketing mission is just fine.
It's just, like, it's quite nice. It's sort of showing the seams a little bit. Yeah, like a thread that you shouldn't pull. In terms of genre, it's all perfect. That, like, we're picking the pockets of 6 guards so that we can activate the controls, so that we can walk across the ceiling fans, so that we can use the turret to blow up something. That's all perfect. How come the keys are for the air conditioning control and not the turret? He very specifically says the guards have been outfitted with special, like, one-of-a-kind keys, and there's 6 keys, and you need all 6 keys in order to turn off the ceiling fan. That's a bit off, right?
It's just like with Dimitri's ring. You just have to, like...
Yeah.
You know. The reason I was surprised, though, that you just labeled it fine is because, I mean, of course, we're going with the pattern of, like, never being in sync, but, like, my first note is I can easily say that my favorite thing about this episode is theater pickpocketing.
Okay. I'm glad you like it.
Like, I could tell you, like, it's in my top 10 missions, maybe.
Wow.
I just think it's, like, again, like, quintessential Sly. There's, like, nothing extra about it. It's just Sly gameplay. I love how it's everything a Sly mission should be. Like, sneaking around a vast interior, pickpocketing guards. There's a sense of danger because you're not Murray. It's very camp, like the setting and the backdrop and everything.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of fun. Like, one of the guards is sleeping.
I was about to say, even the fact that one of the guards is asleep in front of a TV.
Again, like, the game's cartoony roots, like, come out. Yeah, it's just, like, simple, straightforward, but, like, so what makes Sly Sly. And also, by the way, did you know that if you return to that room, the spotlights turn into the Sly logo?
Oh, yeah. That rings a bell.
That is something I learned way later. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Very good.
But yeah.
I should probably get into the thing that I have the most notes about, which is, of course, the Neyla mission.
Shocker.
I have 2 things to say. The first is pretty quick and lighthearted. My favorite mission failed message in the series, and there are some good ones, like Sly 3 got silly with it. But my favorite mission failed message is in this very first level, and I have it written verbatim out in my notes. Neyla doesn't like getting hit any more than you do. Try following her instead. Talking to you like the grade school child you are. Ironically, it just makes me hit Neyla every time so that I get to read that message. But
I knew it was coming.
Yeah. And it's also something players are likely to try on a replay through the story of what if I just tried to kill Neyla at this early juncture? How would things play out differently? But no, they don't let you do that.
We need, like, a Deltarune alternate thing where, like, instead of a mission failed, you get an entirely different, like, narrative.
Oh, no.
Like,
the weird route.
If you whack Neyla... yeah, if you whack Neyla, what happens next? Arpeggio becomes clockwork.
Yeah. Sly kills Neyla for seemingly no reason. And Carmelita and Bentley and Murray are like, why did you kill her? And he can't quite articulate why. That I smell another horrible AU fanfic. I gotta make a note of that.
What's the second thing?
The second thing is I've kind of made a game of over-analyzing all of Neyla's dialogue, because given the nature of her character, she isn't on screen an awful lot compared to, like, Sly and Bentley. So what dialogue she does have very much interests me. Everything she says to Sly at this early juncture is technically true. She says three things. She says that she is not as black and white as Carmelita, which, that's true. That's an objectively true statement. She says that she knows about the Clockwork parts, and she says that she doesn't want the Claw Gang using the Clockwork parts. Again, that is completely true. Like, nothing about that is a lie. From there, we go from the exact words trope, which is one of my favorite things to do in a story when someone says something that is functionally speaking a lie, but if you go back over it, they didn't lie, they just kind of misled you. She goes on to complain that Sly has to keep up with her if she's going to trust him on this case, which, by contrast, is simple, effective, dramatic irony. That, like, yeah, clearly the problem is Neyla has to be able to trust Sly, right? Because he's the criminal and she's a up-and-up junior cop. So it's a brief interaction, but they absolutely knew what they were doing in, I think, writing pretty much everything she says. And then from there, she sets up what sounds plausibly like a dynamic that could last through the entire game. Of Carmelita is the cop that chases you, Neyla is the cop that, like, quietly helps you and gives you an in to the disco that you didn't have, like that kind of thing. That seems, at this early juncture, it not necessarily going to last all the way through to the end credits, but it sounds like it could last for, at least half the game. I think part of what makes the twist that we are getting to work is that they do pull it very early. They don't let this drag on any longer than it has to.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure if it's like when she gives us access to the disco or the
secret entrance to the temple.
Yeah, to the cave with the clockwork heart, the one part. But she says in a very, like, seductive tone, like, but a thief like you.
Yeah.
Now he can go whenever he pleases. And I'm like, it's like that picture of Natalie Portman from, like, Black Swan. And it says, she's looking at the mirror and it says whore. It's like, sis, get over yourself. We get it. Like, you think you're, like, this seductive temptress, but, like, you work better when you're, like, unhinged.
It's not stupid if it works, and it works on Sly. So you can't argue with the results.
Because Sly is like a borderline idiot in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, they really said, like, character development, but let's make it, like, bad. Not bad in terms of quality, but, like, bad for Sly.
Yeah. He takes some knocks.
I do, sometimes when I replay this game, I do feel bad for, like, all he goes through. Because when we actually get to unpack it, and it's especially things that happen in the latter episodes, you really start noticing how he's been, like, basically dragged through the mud. Like, literally dragged through the mud.
Yeah.
Like, in this game. It's not like in the first one, it was, like, success after success. Here he gets tricked, double-crossed, imprisoned, fried by Rajan, which we'll get to.
Yeah, there's some brain damage there.
Like, I mean, evidently, like, come on. Then loses all the parts just to see the owl that killed his own parents right in front of his eyes, reanimated.
After he already killed it, it's back. Yeah.
Like, slide to trauma of thieves. Basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is a very sound analysis, like reading between the lines of Neyla's dialogue, like, kudos.
It's something I pay attention to every time, certainly. as I've said, her presence is kind of the center of how Sly 2 differs from Sly 1. Like the more involved arc, the kind of the changing status quo, a lot of that is tied up in Neyla specifically. Compared to, again, Sly runs, Carmelita shoots, like kind of more straightforward relationship. Do you have anything else you want to say about the individual missions, or will we jump to final thoughts on this heist?
The last note I have of this for Black Chateau is how this is in my best moments, like my favorite moments, but when you asked me about traditions, and one of the traditions is to purposely like do everything wrong when Murray throws Bentley into like the little pipe room. Because I just loved that segment so much. I don't know why, but it's one of those moments that I feel like they could have like used more of throughout the game, like playing on the character's size.
Yeah.
And like it doesn't have to do anything with Bentley being like a tech genius or anything. It's just because he's little. And we obviously see that with the Jean Bisson boss fight, but I do wish like small little like moments like these like give the game the charm it has, and I wish we could have seen more of that, you know.
Yeah, full agree. I really like that. I think this is a great first heist in that it is probably very simple by design. It's literally, we turned off the fountain, and when they sent someone to turn the fountain back on, we stole his car.
Yeah.
That part's very simple, and then it collides with the insanity of using the nightclub's own sign, which is a huge architectural fixture, as a blunt weapon. That sets the tone. The other heists we're going to do are of a similar quality in terms of like, this is not your typical action movie fare. This is making use of the cartoony setting. Even with that like great climax with the behold the majesty of gravity and inertia. The actual gameplay is very simple. And it just demonstrates that you play as all three of them. At the heist, all three of them work together at the same time. And that's what we'll be doing for the next 7 episodes.
I remember making a post about like ranking the heists in terms of how unhinged Bentley was when he was doing them. And this is like I think this is under like Bentley, you sick fuck, because what exactly did he expect to happen once Sly went into like Dimitri's room? Like what was the plan going forward? And he's always like, it never went according to the plan. What was your plan, sweetheart? Get Sly killed?
You can always tell in the slideshow, which, by the way, we haven't mentioned. Bentley slideshows, very flavorful. Big improvement to have those in. You can always tell when there's going to be a boss fight, because as Bentley is explaining the heist plan, he'll say something to the effect of, and then Sly, you go in there, and you just figure it out, and then you come back out with the part. And you're like, that's the part. That's the bit where the boss is going to walk into the room at the same time and be like, what are you doing in my house? That's exactly what happens here, that Bentley's just like, just jump in and grab the tail feathers. And you're like, will the room be empty?
It's so rotten of him, and I know you disagree, but that's so deeply rotten of Bentley.
No, it is.
You know, just like sitting at his comfort of like his fucking ThiefNet laptop and just saying, oh yeah, just like, don't break a sweat or anything. Just like grab the fail tethers. And I'm like,
What an interesting place to start as well, in that, I mean, I guess it demonstrates that they're being very thorough about it, but we can't even let the clockwork tail feathers persist. We have to destroy the tail feathers just to be sure. And it is like a very fun, like seeing it on the printing press and seeing them slapping down. Like, that's a great visual.
Yeah.
But, like, I feel like you could maybe start it with the brain. I also want to note, one of my favorite things to do in any story, and I learned it from watching you, Sly 2 Band of Thieves, is to sneak in foreshadowing via offhanded jokes. Foreshadowing is difficult to do correctly in writing. If you say, like, and now I have my loaded gun and I'm going to put it on my mantelpiece, the audience is going to immediately be like, okay, so there's a gun on the mantelpiece, that's going to come back later, everyone remember that. But if you crack a joke and it seems like the joke is just self-contained and like an offhand comment, the audience hears it and remembers it, but they don't assign any value to it. So they're not waiting for it to come back. And then it's more rewarding when it does come back. When they go to get the truck, you would assume Murray would drive because he's clearly the one who drives the van in general. Instead, he deliberately says,
I'll take the wheel. I know how to drive a stick shift.
You don't parse that at all. It's just like, patter, like regular banter. But that is foreshadowing for later.
Does he actually say that?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's so offhand, you don't remember him saying it, but I can assure you he does.
What?
Yeah.
I usually I get it because I usually when Bentley speaks, I zone out, but what?
It's just a really quick, you're playing as Bentley and Murray, you walk toward the van. There's a little animation of them opening the doors, and Murray says, I know how to drive a stick shift, and then it cuts to Sly. It just reads as a transitional comment of no importance. And that's when you sneak foreshadowing in. We may as well jump ahead and say it while we're on the topic. When Bentley is explaining his plan for destroying Rajan's satellite array in the 3rd level, he says that if you eat too much spice, you get super angry.
Yeah.
And Sly offhandedly murmurs, oh, we should keep that stuff away from Murray. Oh, I see, you're gonna feed it to the elephant. Guess what happens 1 level from now?
Okay, that is something I do remember. I had made a post about that.
Yeah.
And it's but the car one...
The car one is real subtle.
I'm kind of gagged.
And again, they didn't need to have him say that because you would assume he would drive the truck anyway. But he does say that, so it's in there on purpose.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a really good technique. This PlayStation 2 game has this really good writing flourish to it that I have tried to kind of take on myself in as much as possible.
Are we ready for a Starry-Eyed Encounter?
I hope we are. I know that you are you've got a lot to say.
I have a list of why this is the best Sly episode. I want to pour my heart into it. This is very much my favorite Sly episode, a Starry-Eyed Encounter. Why, you ask? Well, I don't even know where to begin with. Okay, you've got arguably the most beautifully designed backdrop.
Yeah.
With the most serene, tranquil color palette.
The colors are amazing.
Something out of Spyro.
Yes.
The lilac, the purples, the pinks, beautiful. You've got the ball where all the villains gather, like the Legion of Doom, basically.
Such a fun idea to foreshadow what's going to happen next, to introduce these characters in a way that is semi-natural and even see them interact just a little bit.
Exactly. The villains attending their own party. It's so organic. It's not forced, it's nothing, because they are actually meeting for a claw gang meeting.
Yeah.
That is ingenious. And during said ball, you dance with Neyla and Carmelita. You've got a mission that involves stealing literal clothes. But most importantly, out of everything else, you've got my favorite character in the entire series.
Not the whole series.
The palace, motherfucking doorman makes his debut in this episode. You don't understand how much I love this guy, okay?
Yeah, you're right, I don't.
It's as much as Battery of Peril, okay? Sly pulls up like literally the most like number one hated person in the Claw Gang circle. They are out to get him. He's already taken down Dimitri. And he literally just knocks the front door, and the palace doorman is like, you need a tuxedo to get in, buddy. Like,
employee of the month.
Employee of the month, palace doorman. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, I want him.
Uh-huh.
I have a crush. I want the palace doorman to impregnate me. I've said it. I hope our child gets his eyes.
I hope your child gets anything.
And you, Snap, aka ironic hater, had the audacity to reblog one of my posts about the palace doorman and say, sorry to break it to you, but there's nothing behind that door. This is the end.
I mean, considering the universe we're talking about, I wouldn't be shocked if there was a fully, like, paid up, unionized, well-liked member of Rajan's staff who everyone knew, and he was literally just a pair of floating eyeballs. And they were like, yeah, he's the doorman. He does a good job. No one, for lack of a better term, blinks at it.
Yeah, that was my list of favorite things.
Okay. Just to circle back, I'm looking over my notes here, and I have a thing to say about the opening cutscene. As always, great sense of atmosphere, builds up the villain nicely. But specifically, there's a level of, like, understated wit to the Sly games that is rare in video games. When a video game normally has humor in it, it's obnoxious. Like, that's the typical gamer mode, yelling a reference at you or whatever. It's a good thing that there's no such thing as a Sly game that just yells 80s movies references at you. That would be bad. But I wanted to shout out as a specific example, Sly mentions that they are going to Rajan's, quote, recently purchased ancestral palace. That statement is just allowed to come and go without, like, drawing attention to itself. Like, that is a 4-word joke in of itself that Sly just says. In general, it speaks to, like, the level of kind of consistent, casual humor that I've been praising for a couple episodes now.
But I don't get it.
An ancestral... That's okay. An ancestral palace is a palace that your ancestors had. But...
So the fact that he bought it was
he just purchased a quote-unquote ancestral palace.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like... Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Like, again, like, it's... that's just... It just comes and go. And I think that's the right mode for that joke to come in.
It completely flew over my head.
There is a lot of stuff like that. We're going to get into, in the next episode, how when you're a kid, the Contessa is just a scary spider. And then as an adult, you understand the things she is saying a lot more. And you're like, you actually get the language she's using in a way that you don't when you're a child.
There's gonna be like some sinister undercurrent that's gonna be exposed in the next episode, and I have no idea about.
Yeah, well, you'll find out, won't you?
She is just a scary spider lady. I am very much like 6 years old.
That's okay. You're still in the right demographic. I have a few notes, scattered notes, like I don't like the turret.
Oh God!
The turret is like that, and I don't like the get on the elephant back mission.
Me neither.
Those are the two negatives.
Me neither.
I think we can agree those are the two dark spots on what is otherwise a very solid level.
Regarding that, actually, the first part of like my criticism list is, personally, if you remove the jobs involving the ball, the rest is a bit like lackluster.
Yeah.
It's a turret mission, the stealing the jewels from the elephants, which I don't like either. Neither of them I like.
No.
The RC copter, I'm also not a huge fan of here, following that little jeep.
Yeah.
And then it's not the worst, but it does get on my nerves. Is like defending Bentley is like.
I actually like that one specifically because we're slowly building in the first level. They came all together on the heist, but mostly they were doing their own thing. Here, in what is nominally just a normal run-of-the-mill mission, we see all three of them in the same room working toward the same end. And you do some Sly stuff, and then you do some Murray stuff. The Bentley hacking is not yet under your control as a player, but that it is happening on screen. I appreciate that mission just for, like, it's another stepping stone building the pace up a little bit further.
I get it, but I do feel from a content perspective that it's a bit more in the filler side of things, because if you're gonna have an episode based on a ball, I wish we could have like explored more of the actual ball itself. Like, we explored so much of Dimitri's nightclub. What was stopping them from applying the same here? Like, what if we had a mission where it was like the palace's kitchen and catering?
Oh,
like,
that would be
if we had
fun.
something to do with the guests, you know, like.
Yeah, I get that.
But whatever.
And yeah, I agree that the RC chopper has like, it has room to improve from here. The Jeep mission is fine. I actually quite like the little section in the heist where you're defending Murray, just because it is much more fun to drop the bombs on guards than it is on like a vehicle and to just see them fly away. Very important minor note I have to raise. This level depicts luxurious accommodation circa the year 2004. And as such, Rajan himself, his own quarters, you enter a room that Bentley explicitly identifies as his room, but also he is kind enough to extend it to his guests, has a television the size of a shed, because they had just barely not invented flat screens yet. So the most luxurious thing you could have was a big TV, and because it was a fucking cathode or whatever, it had to be as thick and as broad as it was tall. And you're confronted with this like beautiful dinosaur of a machine of like, yep, this is the best thing money could buy in 2004. I can't wait to play my PlayStation 2 on this monster that would probably generate enough static electricity to kill you if you touched it.
That's what I was about to say, that when you get near like the screen, you hear like those little pops.
Yeah. It's beautiful, really.
This actually segues nicely into why steal a tuxedo is one of my favorite missions. Like I said in the first episode, it's top 3 missions for me, because I love how like it humanizes like the villains.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's something so mundane to steal clothes in the same game where like Sly steals the owl that murdered his parents' parts.
Yeah.
You get to steal socks.
I love that they have this, you know, we haven't mentioned yet, but whenever you pick up an important item, they have this like zoom in and the background goes blank. And there's a Tumblr post that is literally just the screenshot of that, and Sly is holding a shirt, and the word on screen is shirt with an exclamation mark. And yeah, sure is.
For me, like, this is like peak. Even with the ball, like the ball itself, it's like an event where the villains get to like let their guards down.
Yeah.
Like we get a glimpse into how Rajan and Jean Bisson interact and how the rest handle themselves in public.
Not very well, it turns out.
Well,
No one here knows how to party.
oh my god, yeah, like it might have like as well been like a funeral of like the main attraction was like slide dancing, like get your shit together, like where's the party committee in the ball? But again, it humanizes them because it's not like they're locked up in like their layers like the Fiendish Five, like 24/7, like they're actual quote unquote people.
All right. This is a big thing. It's even evident just through playing the missions. In the first level, you have a mission where you follow Dimitri. The third level, you have a very strange mission where you have to watch Rajan eat watermelon. In the fourth level, you literally, you use the same pickpocketing techniques that you use on guards on the Contessa. All of these involve them moving around and walking around the level, and even that makes them more dynamic than the Fiendish Five were. As you say, it's backed up by the narrative that they have relationships with each other. You can bug their offices.
Yeah.
And after you do that mission in each level, you hear them talking.
Exactly.
Rajan, when I bugged him in the third level, explicitly swears revenge on Inspector Fox for ruining his ball.
What?
Which is not one... Yeah, I left both him and Dimitri on for a little while to see if I got any that I didn't remember, and I don't remember that one. He growls to himself about how Inspector Fox will pay for ruining my reputation. Technically speaking, he's right. He's not the one who gets to pull the trigger on that, but...
Oh my god.
He remembers.
I never, heard that.
Yeah. They must have recorded, a good few.
That's crazy.
I think Dimitri, in a completely different vibe, says that he saw a really hot-looking purple cat girl at his nightclub, and he wonders if he could hit on her.
What?
I think it's always a little hard to tell what he's saying, but I'm pretty sure he mentions Neyla.
I am in disbelief that this exists. I'm actually pulling up the script.
I don't know if it'll be in there because it's not subtitle dialogue. I hope it's in there. It'd be nice if it was in there.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Like we keep saying, little details.
The fact that they acknowledge them. But I do have to say that on this note, one of my other criticisms is that we get almost nothing from Rajan in a Starry-Eyed Encounter.
That's true. He's quite static in this one.
Yeah, I get that they saved most of it for Predator Awakes, and we do get a lot in Predator Awakes, but I wish we could have seen a bit more here. Not only in his capacity as a host, but also as a villain.
Yes. I, as you might imagine, have some notes on Neyla's appearance at the ball. So...
Really?
Yeah, let me just knock that out real quick. Obviously, there's the comment about Carmelita, quote, falling out of her dress. I don't think we need to really, address that. It speaks for itself. This game is rated E for everyone, and it's about talking animals. There is a great moment that I really hope was on purpose. I have to assume it is. There's that nice, shot where the camera rotates around Sly and his dance partner before the dancing minigame happens both times. When it's him and Carmelita, Sly, looks at her and then he looks ahead. And Carmelita seems to give him a look of, genuine interest when he's not looking at her. That's nice. And the first time, when it's him and Neyla, they look at each other, Sly looks ahead in preparation for the dance, and Neyla, her expression slips into a glare just for a second. She glares at this idiot holding her, and then they start the dance, and she's like, oh, you're really good at dancing, Sly. Keep it up. I feel like that's probably an intentional, animation choice that they, had her. Because it is interesting to note that Sly walks up to Neyla and is like, hey, I need to dance with Carmelita. Can I use you as a stepping stone to do that? And Neyla's like, yes, I would love you to do that. I have no objections at all. Which Sly does not unpack at all as a suspicious statement. I think a lot of Neyla's success in deceiving people is just telling them what they want to hear. Sly needed that to happen, so he asked for it to happen, and she let it happen, and he did not give it any further thought as to how this might play out.
Basically. I wish I could, like, rewatch the interactions now that you've pointed them out, because I know you've said it a million times at this point, but it is truly, like, the little touches and the details. Like, I'm kind of astounded by how much I've missed.
There's a lot here. Like, there's a lot that didn't, quote-unquote, need to be in here. One last bit I really, want to bring up. Once you beat the Neyla dance segment, Carmelita comes up. And this, I think, is such a perfect, terrifying showcase of what Carmelita is like at a party. Again, like I mentioned, it could just be that Neyla has, worn her down over the weeks. But just to give you a play-by-play, Carmelita walks up to Neyla and her mysterious new friend and says that they both just danced very well. And Neyla, sarcastically, kind of playfully says, "Oh, I tried to make him look good." Which is a perfectly, normal thing to say at a party. We're all having fun here. And Carmelita instantly is like, "No, he's a better dancer than you, Neyla." No attempt to kind of match the tone. And Sly just has to, go with that, "Hi, needlessly hostile woman. Do you want to also dance?"
The thing is, even though the game tries its hardest to, make Carmelita look like she has a life at the epilogue
very
with,
end.
her listening to music and things.
Yeah.
The game does not fool me. This woman has no life outside of her job. She does not know basic interactions. She, don't know, she has no idea about social cues. She is a horror in social settings.
Yeah.
I
think Neyla's superpower, to an extent, is just that she is... I'm not going to say she's well-adjusted, but she has a knowledge of, basic charismatic interactions that a lot of the people around her evidently don't have, and that front and center is Carmelita Fox. World's best policewoman. World's worst party guest.
I mean... Do we really blame Rajan for wanting revenge?
No, I get it. I have to say that the shot of her in the ending cutscene, she's still in her formal wear dress. She's holding the badge up.
Yeah.
Her fangs are really pronounced.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite images from the whole series. It's just such a good shot of Carmelita.
I love the implication of Rajan on the little radio growling to himself out of anger and saying, "I'm gonna get back at Carmelita for ruining my ball." And it doesn't have anything to do with what transpired with Sly. It's purely out of her social interactions.
Oh no.
she's ruined the ball just by speaking to people.
Oh no. That poor woman.
Basically. I do think that she's an integral part on why this is such a not only a great episode, but also why it develops the Sly Carmelita relationship.
Yes.
I think it's a really significant point in the timeline. In every other episode title, we'll get something that has something menacing or something threatening or something that has to do with the theme or connected to the villain of the episode, except for this one where it's Sly and Carmelita dancing.
That's a good point, yeah.
And with a lot of focus being pulled away from Rajan as the villain, as we've already mentioned, I'm thinking this is clearly an episode on storytelling. And that is in the best moments in my notes section. Because for me, in terms of the plot, this episode ticks all the boxes.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about the plot, and I'm pretty sure I posted about this on Tumblr, is how Sucker Punch seemingly played like their hand early. They play off of Sly One's structure and reveal all the villains gathered at the ball to seemingly like showcase them, just to then like subvert all expectations.
Yeah.
Like, the Countess is a villain. She doesn't work for Interpol. Arpeggio is going to die like unceremoniously.
Yeah.
And Neyla's actually like the ultimate villain present, and I find it very clever to like handle exposition in a way which tricks the player by having them feel involved and that they're in the know, but that could not be further from the truth.
The information you're getting is going the complete opposite direction. That's very true.
Yeah. And then also in terms of narrative, you've got the development and possibly the climax of the love triangle between Sly, Carmelita, and Neyla with the dancing. And the dialogue here, as you've like highlighted already, is like outstanding. Like even like the labeling, the name calling, like old Ironsides.
Old Ironsides.
Like, yes. Even the dress choice, how Neyla wears her hair down, like how Carmelita wears black.
Yeah.
Like, what does that insinuate? She's gonna, what's gonna happen in the next episode. It's just full-on character development without all the action. It's in a romantic setting under a completely different genre. And I think that's, like, great.
Yeah. I feel like it wouldn't be a stretch to say that Sly and Carmelita is easily one of the most developed romances of its generation, by which I mean like PlayStation 2 games, because like good god, what is the competition?
All I can think about is Jackster hitting on what's her name.
Yeah, exactly. Daxter hitting on what's her name. The other point of comparison is Ratchet and Clank. There are basically no women in the first one. The second one introduces what is actually, in retrospect, a very interesting three-dimensional female character who kind of has chemistry with Ratchet. And then, by their own admission, Insomniac Games had no clue what to do with her. So she's just gone in the third one, and there's a different, kind of more one-note female character who kisses Ratchet at the end. Like, that's the bar. That's about what PlayStation 2 games are typically like. And there is a sense of continuity and, like, of making the relationship actually important. It's all part of the combined narrative that Sly is a thief, Carmelita is chasing him, but instead of just being outright enemies, they have this complication going on. You've sold me on this episode. Like I liked it just fine as an episode, but you've sold me on it as a very kind of necessary way to like build that up further.
My job here is done. Okay. But I do agree with what you just said, and also it's so interesting to see the relationship develop once they're both placed outside the law.
Yeah.
I think that's like also crucial. But yeah, I mean, obviously that like when shit hits the fan is like the Contessa in Canada episode, so we'll discuss that later. But with that being said, do you have anything else on A Starry-Eyed Encounter?
I'm afraid to say that I actually do.
You do?
I always thought that the title for this heist, because normally, Bentley tries to come up with some kind of pun or snappy title for what the operation is called. I always thought as a kid this one was particularly like dull, because it's just called Operation Hippo Drop, which oh yeah, in case I haven't made it clear, this is a highlight for me of the whole series. I remember trying to explain what Sly Cooper was to someone once, and I said there's a bit where the protagonist ball dances so good that no one notices his friend getting lowered down from the ceiling to use a chainsaw on a statue and then get pulled back up. Like I can't let this episode go by without stressing that is, as the kids say, peak cinema. Unlike when I was playing through this in preparation for this episode, my wife was in the room as I was finishing this level, and the words Operation Hippodrop came on screen, and she let me know that that is a reference to an obscure Disney film from 1995.
You're making this shit up.
Starring Danny Glover and Ray Liotta as Green Berets during the Vietnam War who have to drop. They're working with a local village against the Viet Cong, and the village's elephant dies, and they have to bring them a new elephant. It's wacky Disney comedy, and did I mention it's the Vietnam War? The perfect setting for a Disney wacky fun time zany adventure comedy movie? So I had to learn this movie existed, and now so do you, and now so do all of our listeners.
Finally enough, you bring up our listeners, because I was just about to say to everyone listening, if anyone would like to fill in for my position as co-host, I will be stepping down after this revelation.
You're going to go and settle down with the doorman, as you've always dreamed. You're going to live the domestic bliss life.
I was going to say he can spit in my mouth, but can he?
Can he? We don't know.
Can he?
We can't definitively say
Can he?
whether he can. On that horrific note, I am happy to move on to our third and, well, technically fourth and final level for this episode.
My God, you are full of insight tonight.
I would call it cursed knowledge, more like, but I'm full of something.
It is cursed knowledge.
You're welcome.
So, the predator awakes. I am speechless. I am gooped. I am gagged, because no shade towards this episode, but I think nothing in it can compete with its ending.
I feel the exact same way. The color palette's a bit drab.
Really?
Well, like, compared to the last level.
Definitely.
You go from this lush, lavish, beautiful setting to just a rainy jungle in rainy jungle colors. Some of the missions are grand, some of them are a bit dull. It is defined by its ending, I think. That is where all of my focus goes. I do have one thing to note in terms of the basic missions, and I have a feeling you will agree with me on this. The highlight is getting to meet the local thieves guild. The same character model used twice, but they get a different funny voice to indicate that it's a different person wearing the same set of robes. It's just a nice touch that, this is a new group of, neutral third-party criminals that Sly and the gang are allying with against the Claw Gang. It adds to the world a little bit. You get the sense that there's, a whole world of local thieves guilds all over, and this is one that happens to intersect with Sly's story. There is, an ecosystem and an economy of, Bentley is selling all of the stuff you steal to someone. They're a pleasure for their 2 lines that they each get. They're very fun.
They're both in my best and worst.
Oh.
They are a brief nose, but I always was, very, very, for as long as I can remember, I was very intrigued by them. I think they add exactly what you're talking about. It opens up the world, it expands it, it has, bigger world implications, but at the same time, I do wish we had, a bit more of, clarification. I feel like it's a bit out of nowhere. Don't get me wrong, I love when Sly gets, silly, wacky, goofy, cartoony, with, more absurd elements,
yeah,
hopping vampires or, lemon rage. But this one were, too random.
Yeah.
And that, I hate that mission, too. It's, pure filler, just because they needed something for Murray until, the finale.
It's a little unclear. I guess they're, jungle-based? Because Bentley explicitly says that the nearest hospital is 106 miles away. So, this is the middle of nowhere. It's not like they're operating out of a local town. They had to take a commute to get out here, too.
They take the bus,
Yeah, the bus to the
and that's it.
old spice temple.
Okay, I do have other notes, but they're so insignificant when it comes to the final,
Yeah.
complete final act. So why don't we just break it down chronologically?
I'll sneak in. I think it segues in nicely that I do have what is technically just another normal mission, another normal day for Sly. The second Neyla chase.
Yeah.
I just wanted to note this as perhaps people will find it relatable. When you first play that mission, you're just focusing on doing the mission, on following Neyla. That is the full test of your childhood gaming abilities. And then you grow up a little bit and you get better at video games and it's not a challenge anymore. And you notice Neyla says, "Follow me to the secret entrance," and laps the entire level to bring Sly to a place 10 feet away. For a while, beauty is dead. There's no such thing as video games. You can see the Matrix code. But then you get a little bit older still, and you decide, actually, that's very funny. I personally headcanon that she did that on purpose. That's not a metaphor. You're not getting a visual that is different from what happened in universe. Neyla literally led Sly in a huge circle as one last God, this guy is really gullible, before deciding that she was done playing around with him.
While promising him a date.
I was about to say, I said in the Paris level that she didn't technically tell any lies. She was presumably lying when she said she didn't mind him using her in India. But the first definitive lie she tells is at this juncture, at this very important juncture, she says, "We're on for that date in Bollywood," and they are not on for that date in Bollywood. That is not happening.
How sick do you have to be to say, "And we're on for that date in Bollywood," and then send him to jail? She was literally just cackling while Sly was getting dragged in handcuffs, and she's like, "Don't drop the soap, honey."
Yeah.
Cliggity clank, cliggity
She
clank.
didn't have to.
Girl.
She didn't have to say yes. She knew. She knew she wasn't going to do that. What an icon. What a role model.
Exactly.
That is a quote-unquote normal mission where you get a clockwork part.
Yeah, you do.
You just get it. I do find it a little bit strange that they split the heart in half, but apparently both halves of the heart work fine. I kind of get how they ended up there, but I feel like that could have been lungs or whatever, something that there is two of, but it works.
Yeah, it is weird now that you mention it. I've never actually thought about that.
Yeah. It's one of those things where each individual element of it makes sense, but when you look at the whole picture, you're like, oh, okay.
Who had the brain?
Arpeggio.
Okay.
Arpeggio was doing unspecified experiments on the brain, presumably related to trying to reanimate the body.
Anyway.
We both contemplated that mental image for a little bit. Now we're moving on.
Personally, this is truly where the plot gets rolling.
Oh, for sure.
In all aspects. Up until this point, it's been business as usual. We didn't see much focus on the characters and their own individual development. So it was obvious that a bit of oomph, a nice thrust was necessary, a bit snappy. And of course it came in the form of the twist.
Yes. Like I said earlier in this recording, this completely blew my mind as a kid. And I think part of that is that they picked the perfect moment for it, that you've gotten just used enough to the formula, that you've done 2 successful heists. Even if you were, say, an older kid and you were expecting some sort of betrayal or twist, you would be expecting it in level 6 or 7, not level 3. It's an immediate jolt. It's immediately the plot is going in a completely different direction. And I think that is a big part of why it works so well.
Yeah. I'm surprised, though, that you said that it caught you by surprise, because I feel like I'm unable to actually assess, because I wish I could experience playing the game for the first time so that I could tell, but I genuinely can't remember. This has been like basic knowledge my entire life, so
Sure.
I don't know if it's like an actual like twist, but as a twist, it's just so good. I mean, obviously when Sly shows up and Rajan is like throwing his tantrum and Neela's tone has changed, you know something is coming up at that point, but it doesn't take away from it.
Yeah. I have to say, this was like my 15th time playing this game. I still felt a sense of like, oh no, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
As I was playing through like the finale. Because like the first time when I was very young and I played it, I was shocked. I was blown away at the right moment. And then every playthrough since, you know it's coming. You know what's gonna come up next.
Yeah. And it comes after a great heist.
Yeah.
It's like the cherry on top because
Cherry Bomb 500 on top.
not her. I'm gonna get to her, by the
Sure.
way. I have something to say about her. But Wet Tiger is like a bit underrated in my eyes. Like, just because of like the sheer fuckery of it all. Like, Bentley really said, I'm gonna fuck shit up. And he did. Like, they flood an entire like temple. Witnessing the hub like fill up with water is like great.
It is. It's like legitimately kind of striking visual to see, and they make sure to zoom out fully so you can really like. They designed the level with a lot of verticality, so you can see some of the landmarks. Like the Safehouse is okay, and you can recognize the trees, but like no, Bentley ruined that, man.
Basically, like they were like, we're gonna like literally destroy Rajan to the point where he has to like resort to selling carpets. That's it. And then like right after that, like Neyla swoops in, pulls off her best Judas impersonation, and she takes what the player has like been familiar with at this point, which is like basically following her, and she says it with such a like sinister bitchy tone, like, try and keep up.
Yeah.
Girl, I'm floored.
Yeah.
I am.
Even the fact that all she does is lead Sly into brain damage range and then just stand there distractingly. Like, she doesn't even do him the dignity of hitting him herself. She uses Rajan as a weapon. Like, that is quite indicative as to how everyone around her is just a chess piece to be moved.
Exactly. And yes, like it's fried like a pancake, but it's also interesting to consider. And we are going to get into this when we make the episode about cut content, but when they made this little sequence of her leading him to getting fried and just sitting there, were they still gonna have her be Rajan's daughter?
Yeah. There's a lot of discussion to be had there in a future episode.
Yes. Because, as you said, she uses him as a pawn. And that'd be interesting if they had done that thinking that she would be his daughter.
Yeah.
Because it'd be basically like using her own dad.
Brutal.
Just saying.
Rajan has kind of been upstaged twice in a row now. That he wasn't given that much focus in the previous level, and now, like, you still have to deal with him. He's still a challenging boss fight, but suddenly you aren't just thinking about Rajan anymore. You've got other shit to worry about.
Although the boss fight is good.
Yes.
I enjoy it, and I think I'm a bit biased to it because this was the moment that once I was old enough to like have my own playthrough instead of watching my dad play it, this was like the moment that I got to confront me being scared of him.
Oh,
I was petrified of Rajan, and I still kind of am, but like
he's
when he's a scary guy.
he's terrifyingly tall.
Yes.
Like, Murray is so much bigger than Sly and Bentley, and then during that boss fight, you realize how short Murray is compared to Rajan. It's ridiculous.
He's like huge,
Yeah.
genuinely. And I love how we also get like our first, like, this is a moment where like Murray graduates from being Avril Lavigne theory central and actually has his own personal character development, because
Yeah.
it's his big moment. It's like his time to shine.
I love that about this game, that it's very deliberate about Sly is such an attention hog. He is so like naturally angled toward the limelight.
Yeah.
But they have given space for Murray and Bentley to have their own moments and their own boss fights.
Yes.
One thing that I find very interesting, and as with a lot of things I am able to bring up about this game, it is a minor, possibly unintentional detail. Rajan calls Murray a fat, pathetic weakling. Murray rebuts, oh, I may be big, but I'm not weak. Instead of like reacting to pathetic in any way, Murray explicitly brings up, I may be big and not as smart as the other guys, which is not something Rajan said. It's almost like Murray heard this guy insulting him and just assumed that he was also calling him stupid, which says a lot about Murray's self-esteem. What a funny cartoon man.
I mean, now that you bring this up, maybe it is the same Murray as Sly 1.
Yeah.
That is coming out in this boss fight. But obviously Rajan strikes a chord with him because he touches on Murray's insecurities, and even with this detail that you bring up, it's clear. But when he stands up and he actually like puts Rajan in his place and he says, one thing I'm not is weak. I'm like, period.
Yeah.
Like, tell him, like, louder. Like, bring it home.
It's so good.
Like, he ate that boss fight.
Yeah.
Just before getting, like, incarcerated, obviously.
Did you know, because I did this in my playthrough, Rajan summons in guards, which actually works against his favor because those guards drop health if you kill enough of them, and you can throw them.
Yeah.
The game is programmed that if you throw an enemy at another enemy, the enemy who is struck will also fall over and enter the throwable pose. You can pick up and throw Rajan.
Yeah.
And when you pick him up, not only does he do the usual, like, undignified flail in Murray's arms, the camera angle and like goes back to normal, and like the boss music fades out, and it you're just playing a normal segment. You're stuck, but you're back to normal, and then you throw him into the electricity, and the boss music comes back in. It's so janky. I love it.
Yeah.
But it must have been on purpose. They could have turned that off if they wanted.
Yeah. No, I tried to do that every time I play it, just because at some point it does get a bit irritating.
Yeah.
Like trying to push him through the lasers. So
Yeah.
having him like drop and pick him up like makes him lose even more health. It is janky, as you said, but it's also like very charming as well. Like Rajan is defeated, Murray is victorious, but it is futile because Interpol arrives. And that's when Neyla, not satisfied with betraying the Cooper gang, also throws Carmelita under the bus.
And very hard, too.
Like, it's so... I mean, to be fair, Carmelita, like, girl, get some clarity back. Like, who else can you blame after you couldn't recognize Sly that you've been chasing for years without his blue getup on?
Yeah. I realized...
Like...
Because when I was playing through this, I made a note in the second level of like, oh, Neyla is playing along with Sly because she's trying to, keep him on side. She's telling him what he wants to hear. She finds this whole business undignified, but she needs him around as a pawn. It was playing through the end of this level that I realized, oh no, she legitimately did not mind helping Sly dance with Carmelita because she was thinking ahead.
Exactly.
That ties in very nicely.
She's a master fucking manipulator. Like, girl, you tricked everyone, as she herself says. Like,
yeah,
it is really like her game. Yeah, like the Contessa falls for it, which, unbeknownst to the player at this point, has ulterior motives to do so. I don't think she actually believes that Carmelita was in cahoots with the gang.
Because the scene ends with Contessa going, "Such a pity when an officer falls from the light." And Neyla goes, "Yes, a shame." And it's hard to tell if they're both in on each other's jokes, but they're definitely privately, they're both like,
It's like watching a telenovela, basically.
You're not wrong.
Especially when you know what's going to happen. To cap it all off, if this wasn't enough, we've got the absolutely hilarious cutscene at the end where Bentley has to learn how to drive manual.
Yeah.
And if we joked about the gang making its way to Paris, from Paris to Wales in the last episode, imagine Bentley, who has just learned how to drive manual, get from the Indian jungle to Prague.
Yeah.
Do you know how long that takes?
A long time.
That is an 83-hour drive.
Wasn't there a classic post? Someone worked it out on Google Maps.
That's how I found it.
Yeah, that's horrible to think about. And he goes straight there. From what I recall, the start of the next cutscene, he just went straight there across all of Asia.
This was the perfect ending to the perfect ending of an episode.
Yes.
Like that cutscene. Some of the missions here for me are top tier. Like leading Rajan, which still scares me shitless.
Genuinely tense.
Like I never fuck around during that job. Fuck around and find out, not me. Like there's one tree on top of the... You know how to get to the spice grinding room? You have to
yes, and
go around.
Then there's
on top of
the tree on the roof. Yes,
exactly. So if you just stay there very safely, you can pull up the mission without having any risky business.
Nice.
That mission also really helps him establish Rajan as a villain.
Yeah.
Which we didn't have in the episode prior. He's all bark, no bite until he eventually gets cornered and forced to show his brutal side. I do wish though it was a bit longer, or maybe the watermelons could be spread out more widely.
But then you couldn't hide safely in that tree. That would be the trade-off there.
True. But I'm also very much a coward.
Okay.
In terms of design, which you kind of shaded the palette before. For me, I love how it's mostly made out of greens because it just makes the jungle feel very dense.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of design, I do want to briefly talk about the interiors and how much I appreciate the creative choices they took for them, because I'm just gonna quickly put my literature degree, not to brag,
that's what it's
but
for.
Put it to use
Podcasting.
and just say that this level emulates the duality of Rajan, because he presents himself as a vicious, brutal predator the jungle, and yet inside he's still trying to pursue this life of riches even after the total humiliation at his ball.
Yeah.
He wants to be seen as regal and classy, the decor in the palace's interior, even though it's all rubble and moss. I feel Sucker Punch drew inspiration from the Indian caste system and how some people desperately fake it till they make it, rags to riches storyline.
Yeah.
But you can't change who Rajan is deep inside.
Yeah. As Sly says in the intro to the second level, he goes to great lengths to convince others of his riches, but it's mostly to convince himself.
Exactly. even the design, I feel like, embodies that very nicely.
I'm a bit hesitant to ask. I'm just going over my notes, and I think I've covered everything. I believe you had a comment to make concerning the Cherry Bomb 500 that you haven't gotten to yet. Yes.
It's not specifically about the cherry bomb. It's about the bomb segment. It's just like one of those questions that is a bit tantalizing if you don't have the answer to it. And I think actually no one has. It more so has to do with the spice grinder destruction.
Yes.
I don't know if like this is like common knowledge or whatever, but like during that mission, like there's a little like cell or vault in the downstairs area.
Yes, and it autosaves when you blow it open.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I always liked that. I like the empty balcony in Paris. It's just like, oh, there's an extra thing here. Okay.
But is it a mistake?
I think it autosaves because the game wants to remember whether or not you've blown up that door. But all that's back there is a little bit of money. So I don't know why they would...
Exactly.
I think it's just another thing that you can use the barrel on.
Okay.
You get, like, what, 8 coins? But it's kind of rewarding the, like, yeah, you thought you could blow this door open, and you can blow this door open.
I'm just gonna take that and run with it because it's one of, like, the Black Chateau questions, which is, like, I need the answer to, but I'm never gonna get.
Yeah, it might be the best you get, all right.
Oh, I'll take it. The only other thing in my, like, criticisms is that I do wish the hub was a bit easier to traverse, especially, like, those treetops that need slide down 50 different vines to get to.
I'd say that as well. That, especially when you get, like, the Thief Guild mission, you have to stand at a certain point, like, just to activate the job. And to get to that point, you have to basically get on one specific tower and then go from there. Like, it's not as open as the urban landscapes where you can just go from roof to roof however you want.
But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
We've done it. I do have to say that before we started recording, I was like low-key petrified. Snap can vouch.
Yeah.
But like, this seemed overwhelmingly like a lot. And I'm happy with how we've covered it. But then again, most of like the story is in the next episode.
Yeah. I've played up as far as I'm about to start the second Prague level, and I already have a lot of notes. So we're going to get back into it very shortly. I think it's fair to say that we're going to aim to release these 2 episodes near each other, so you shouldn't be waiting too long for the second half. Do you have any, like, snappy final
outro
thoughts?
notes?
Yeah.
I will say that even though I've given, like, in retrospect and having written these notes and, like, covering them in the span of, like, 2.5 hours, as much as I love the Prague episodes, I feel like, and as much shit as I've given the Black Chateau as well, I feel like this part of the game is probably my favorite.
I remember you saying that you like the start of stories.
Yeah.
And likewise, just from replaying these first levels over and over, I have such like a fondness and such an attachment to not only this game, but these parts of this game. It's always a pleasure to revisit.
Until the trilogy had come out, my original copy of Sly 2 was like so severely scratched that it wouldn't play past the jailbreak intro cutscene. So until the trilogy came out, I literally played Black Chateau and the Tourajan levels so many times, that like I know them by heart.
Good Lord.
And then the rest like was just like re-jogging my memory when the trilogy came out. So this is like the like the Jean Visson boss fight specifically was like playing it like for the first time when the trilogy came out.
Did I dream this?
Exactly that. But these first few episodes are like Yeah, they have like a very special place in my heart, you know?
Absolutely. I think that has been well established for both of us at this stage.
Snap if you don't have anything else to add.
I support Neyla in all she does, and I can't wait to see what she does next. Hashtag girlboss, hashtag I'm with her, hashtag support women in villainy.
I 100% endorse that. And with that, we'll see you in part 2 of the Slide 2 coverage.
Good night, everybody.
Something witty.